Most gardeners are starving their soil while obsessing over feeding their plants, and it shows up as weak growth, pest pressure, and crops that never quite finish strong. I see it constantly. Bottled nutrients go in, plants respond fast, then stall, yellow, or collapse under stress. That's not a nutrient problem, that's a soil biology problem. And one of the most overlooked fixes comes from an ancient tree leaf that people walk past every day without understanding what it actually does. I'm talking about neem leaves. Neem works because it feeds soil life before it feeds plants. Neem isn't magic, but it behaves like it is when you understand how to use it. Most people hear neem and think pest control spray. That's a tiny part of the story. The real power is in the leaf itself, broken down slowly in soil the same way it's been used for centuries. When I first started working neem leaves into garden beds, the difference wasn't explosive growth. It was consistency. Plants stayed green longer, stress dropped during heat waves, and pest pressure fell without me spraying anything. That's because neem feeds microbes first, and microbes feed plants correctly. Fresh neem leaves contain nitrogen, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, and, well, a long list of trace elements. But more importantly, they contain compounds that regulate how fast nutrients are released. That's why it doesn't burn plants the way fast fertilizers do. Why did ancient growers trust leaves instead of powders? Older farming systems didn't rely on concentrated inputs. They relied on materials that decomposed predictably. Neem leaves break down slowly, especially when chopped and mixed into soil. In my raised beds, I work chopped neem leaves into the top 10 to 15 centimeters of soil at about 2 handfuls per square meter before planting heavy feeders like tomatoes or brassicas. What happens next is gradual, not dramatic. Over 3 to 4 weeks, microbial activity increases, the soil smells richer, and plant growth becomes steady instead of spiky. That steady curve matters more than fast early growth, especially for fruiting crops. Powders and extracts skip this process, leaves don't. Neem feeds while quietly suppressing problems. This is where neem becomes a fertilizer bomb instead of just another amendment. Neem leaves contain natural compounds that suppress certain soil pests and pathogenic fungi without sterilizing the soil. That distinction matters. I've seen root knot nematode pressure drop noticeably in beds where neem leaves were incorporated every season. Not eliminated, but reduced enough that plants finished strong instead of collapsing mid-season. The soil stayed alive, which is the goal. When people ask why their garden needs constant fixing, it's often because they're killing the biology that would have stabilized it. In a small backyard garden, I treat neem leaves like a base amendment, not a supplement. Before planting, I dry the leaves slightly so they're brittle, then crush them by hand. For a standard raised bed, about 1.2 by 2.4 meters, I use roughly 1 full bucket of crushed leaves mixed evenly into the top layer of soil. I don't bury them deep. Oxygen matters for decomposition. Within a month, earthworms show up in higher numbers, which tells me the system is working. For potted plants, I reduce the amount significantly. A tablespoon of crushed neem leaf mixed into 5 liters of potting mix is enough. More than that can slow early growth slightly, which isn't harmful, but surprises people who expect instant results. Neem in hydroponics needs restraint and understanding. This is where experience matters. You don't dump neem leaves into a hydro system, but neem still has a place if you're running organic or hybrid systems. I've used neem leaf tea as a microbial support additive, not a nutrient solution. A small handful of crushed leaves soaked in 10 liters of water for 24 hours, strained thoroughly, then diluted at least 10 to 1 before adding to a system. This isn't about feeding nitrogen directly, it's about supporting beneficial microbes in media-based hydro systems. Used sparingly, it improves root health, but overused, it clouds water and causes oxygen problems. This is one area where, honestly, more is not better. Why neem doesn't behave like compost? Neem leaves decompose slower than most green materials, and that's actually an advantage. They don't spike nitrogen, they don't collapse structure. Instead, they contribute to long-term soil stability. I don't replace compost with neem. I layer them. Compost provides bulk organic matter. Neem provides mineral balance and biological regulation. Together, they really do outperform either one alone. If you're relying on neem to replace all fertility, you're misunderstanding its role. It's a stabilizer, not a shortcut. You know, there's a lot of common advice about neem that can really lead gardeners astray. Honestly, one of the biggest mistakes I see is people using neem oil constantly and then wondering why their soil problems just keep persisting. Spraying pests doesn't actually fix root health, does it? Another mistake is applying neem leaf too late in the season and expecting, well, immediate yield increases. Neem is, first and foremost, preventative. It works best when you apply it before any problems actually show up. If your plants are already stressed, neem can support their recovery, but it just won't reverse severe deficiencies overnight. That slow effect is exactly why I think people tend to underestimate it. So, why does neem work better over multiple seasons? Well, the real payoff honestly comes in year 2 and 3. Beds treated with neem leaves consistently develop darker soil, a better crumb structure, and, fewer nutrient swings. I've actually measured a reduced need for supplemental feeding by about 30% in beds where neem is used annually. That's not just theory, that's tracked input reduction. Neem builds soil memory. Once you see that, it's really hard to go back to reactive gardening. So, this is why ancient knowledge still matters. Neem trees weren't used casually, They were respected because people observed outcomes over, generations. Modern gardening often ignores time as a factor. Neem, though, forces you to slow down and work with systems instead of against them. If you want fast green growth, neem will frustrate you. But if you want resilient plants that finish strong, neem becomes, indispensable. What serious growers should take from this? This isn't about chasing trends or exotic inputs. It's about using materials that solve multiple problems at once without creating new ones. Neem leaves feed, protect, and stabilize. That combination is, honestly, quite rare. If you're growing food seriously, you don't need more products, you need better systems. If this kind of practical, field-tested knowledge helps you grow better food, subscribe to the Farm Logic YouTube channel and share this video with gardeners who are tired of fixing the same problems every season. Better harvests come from understanding how nature already solved these problems long before we started bottling them.